How's everybody out there? Oh, it says I'm live. This is always a fun. Oh, there I am. A little bit better with the lighting. Hi, it's Kristen back at it today for an episode of Frankenstein Tea, delivered to you from my home on High Street on Block Island. This is an item-free library program of short stories for adult listeners. And I am an hour ahead of you today on Sunday, October 11th. I'll tell you what's happening. My house, my roommate is getting a new bed. There's lots of garage sales happening on Block Island today. What a fun day. People are selling and get rid of things, and there's free stuff on the lawn across the street from me, and this is coming from the Old Town Inn, and things are being swapped, and it's a fun fall day out here. But anyway, they're about to come in. My roommate has gone off to get a new bed for herself. So there's going to be some action and commotion happening. So I thought I would just read this story while they were not here at the house. And then you can listen to it at 3:00 when I release it. So I am here. All is well. I hope all is well with you. I'm going to read something today from a novel that I just finished. It's called Betty. And it's by Tiffany McDaniel, and it's brand new. And there's no way that, I should be recording something from this book. So I'm going to be a little under the radar about it. I didn't post this cover or, tag her as an author or tag the title of the book. But it was a great read. I just read it this weekend, and I'm going to read you one chapter from it. And so yesterday was World Mental Health Day. I read in honor of that. And it is also Indigenous People Weekend. And so I read in honor of that. This short story comes from Tiffany McDaniel's Betty. And Betty is a young Cherokee female, young woman, young girl in this book. And she is starting a little bit to come of age. This is her first job out of her house. And I think it can stand alone. Let's try it. If it doesn't stand alone, I won't release it at 3, but let's try it. Okay, chapter 28. And thou hast filled me with wrinkles, which is a witness against me. Job 16:8. We called her old slipperwort, as if all of her life she had been some old hunched woman who lived in a shotgun shack full of ants. A shotgun shack is a narrow house built with each room joined to the next by interior doors. If you were to fire a shotgun through the front door, the blast would shoot through to the back and all the doors in between. Old woman Slipperwort's shotgun shack was old, but she was older. She still got around by herself, but sometimes hire girls to help her. But would sometimes hire girls to help her. That summer, I was paid to work and stay at her place. The first night I was there, I woke during a heavy rainstorm. I had to pee, but the bathroom was at the rear of the house. I would have to pass through old woman Slipperwort's bedroom. Her door was open and her light was off, but the moonlight was shining on her naked body as she sat on the edge of her bed. I had only ever seen her white hair tied up into a bun, but it was now loose. It fell the length of her backside and was thin enough. I could see her body through it. I'd never seen such an aged, naked body before. There was something scary to me in the way her skin draped and fell. I worried it would fall completely off, revealing her skeleton beneath. I imagined the black sockets of her skull, the curvature of her rib bones, caging her beating heart. Quietly, I walked backward until I was in the living room again. It was raining even heavier outside. I might have still gone out, but having just seen Slipperwort the way I had, I found myself feeling unsettled, if not disoriented. I went to the corner of the room and squatted, the pee soaking the green carpeting beneath me. The next morning, I got up early to make sure the spot had dried. I dragged the nearby lamp table over so it could cover the area. Before I could start breakfast, old woman Slipperwort handed me a copy of Sigmund Freud's interpretation of dreams. Return this to Chairfool, she told me. He let me borrow it after I told him I kept I keep dreaming about a stick laying on the ground. The book wasn't no help. Why you think I keep dreaming about a stick, little Cherokee? Maybe you ain't no good at dreaming, I said. She dropped her eyes and frowned. I sure the hell used to be. I tucked the book under my arm and headed into town. When I arrived at Chair Fool's barbershop, I found Americus Diamondback sitting on a bench outside. He folded his New York Times and smacked the faded paper down on the bench as he shifted in his three-piece suit. Your sloppy sister Flossie, he said to me. I know she did something to my dog. He petted the hog he replaced Corncob with and had named Wall Street. I don't know what you're flapping your jaws about, I said before opening the barbershop door. Inside, Mr. Chairfool was training Trustin on how to sharpen a blade. Trustin had been Chairfool's apprentice for a few weeks. It was strange to see him looking so respectable in a little white jacket and pair of black slacks. He liked working at the barbershop well enough. It gave him extra money to spend on art supplies. I handed the book to Chairfool. He pitched it through the open doorway to the back of the room. He turned around with a smile, showing the gap in his front teeth, while his reddish blonde mustache hung like feathers on either side of his mouth. He had the type of haircut I imagined his mother once told him looked best on him. Long enough to cover his ears and hide his hearing aids, but short enough to be respectable. Trustin was about to practice shaving on me, Chairfool said. But since you're here, Betty, he can practice on you. I ain't got no beard, I frowned and felt my face. Oh, your brother ain't even going to be using a real razor. It's for him to discipline his wrist and his concentration. Chairfool tapped on the jar of Fireballs sitting on the shelf behind him. You can have candy after, he said in a sing-song voice. I sat in one of the chairs usually occupied by the men of Breathed. I could smell cologne and sweat coming off the leather. Trustin, Chairfool folded his arms and looked sternly upon my brother. What's the jingle you're supposed to say to every customer before they sit? Trustin sighed. She ain't really a customer, ain't even going to be paying. It ain't about giving a shave to a man who can pay, Chairfool said. It's about giving a shave to a man who needs it. You're looking at this all wrong, son. Now, Betty, you stand back up. And Trustin, you treat her as well as you treat the richest man in the world. I stood with a smile on my face as Trustin hung his shoulders. Sit down in the chair, fool, and you'll leave looking cool, he said. Now, Trustin, Chairfool said, you got to say it loud enough for the customer to hear you. Sit down in the chair, fool, and you'll leave looking cool. Trustin had said it so loud it felt as though his voice had echoed through Main Lane. That's good, son, Chairfool smiled. I sat back down and wiggled while Trustin unfolded the barber's cloth. He draped it across me, tucking it around my neck. He used a brush to smear shaving cream on my face and down my neck. It tickles, I laughed. Next, Trustin picked up a small black comb. Chairfool cleared his throat as he nodded toward the strip of leather hanging from the back of the chair. Trustin stroked the comb's flat edge against the leather like he was sharpening a straight razor. After a few seconds, he ran his thumb alongside the comb, checking its sharpness. Satisfied, he laid its edge against my skin. He shaved carefully, wiping the cream from my face with each new glide. Don't cut me, I said. Mr. Chairfool chuckled, but Trustin only turned my face to the side to get the angle of my jawline. He moved the comb in swift, graceful movements. I felt as though I was one of his canvases. A brush stroke here, another there. Maybe in his eyes he was doing nothing more than painting my portrait. Once he finished, he picked up the towel and wiped off the little smears of cream around my ears and under my nose. He patted bay rum on my cheeks and down my neck. Not bad. Chairfool gave my brother a slap on the back. What you think, Betty? I like it. I rubbed my face and smiled at my brother, who smiled back. Chairfool held out the jar of Fireballs. I took 3. I tossed one into my mouth as I left. I offered the second to Americus outside, who took it immediately. I'm sorry your dog went missing, by the way, I said to him. He popped the fireball into his mouth, only to hold it against the inside of his cheek. I bet you are sorry, he said, just as I bet shotguns got morals. I stuck my tongue out at him just before racing back to Old Woman Slipperwarts. I handed her the third fireball. She took out her false teeth and started sucking on the candy with the joy of a small child. What you gonna be wanting for dinner later? I asked her. Okra, some beetroot too. Need to eat something the color of blood. Keeps you healthy. She filled her cheeks with air until the fireball shot out of her mouth. Hee 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 hee. She laughed with a wide grin. After I finished my afternoon chores of sweeping and airing out her cabinets, I started dinner. While I tossed okra slices in cornmeal and dropped them into hot oil, Old Woman Slipperwort sat at the table and spoke of her youth. She said she could still remember how beautiful she used to be. My hair used to be the color of fire, she said. Men would gladly burn it just to kiss me. Now it is the color of ash. As I stirred the okra, I asked her if she had always lived in Breathed. Oh, yes, she replied. I could never leave the hills. The people I wouldn't mind leaving, but never nature herself. When I was a small girl, I used to think I was the daughter of Mother Nature. I would wear flowers in my hair that my real mother would take out because she was allergic. Achoo! She faked a sneeze as we both laughed. Her nose twitched just before she sneezed for real. Bless you, I said. I needed blessed after a sneeze like that, dear girl. She wiped her nose, then spoke about her love of trees. I like nature too, I said as I stood back from the fry pan and the popping oil. Oh, I know you do, little Cherokee. When you leave Breathed, you're the type of girl who's going to go from mountain to mountain, hill to hill, countryside to countryside. I won't leave Breathed, I said. Sometimes I go to a faraway place, but I don't really leave. It's not Mother Nature you'll leave, my dear. Don't sound so frightened. It's human nature you'll want to get away from. The thing about Breathed is that she gives you both the ripe fruit and the rotted in the very same bite. You're the type of girl who's going to spit that rot right back out one day. You'll go in search of a fruit that doesn't spoil so goddamn much. The wider your hips get, the stronger this thought of leaving. My hips won't get no wider. Oh, sure they will. You got hints of it. Hints of what? Of being a woman. But you ain't there yet. She spoke more of her youth and beauty as I plated the okra and sliced some beetroot. When I sat with her at the table, she reminded me to put a fresh dollop of honey on the saucer. It was for the ants when they passed by. When you let ants in your house the way you do, I asked her while I freed a small one trapped in the honey. Why you let ants in your house the way you do, I asked her while I freed a small one trapped in the honey. Because when you go back home, she said, the ants will be all I'll have left. She laughed as one of the ants crawled up her arm. After dinner, Old Woman Slipperwort went to bed. I fell asleep watching TV through the crawling ants and static. I woke a few hours later needing to pee. I walked quietly toward her bedroom, hoping I could pass through to the bathroom. Like the night before, I found her naked and sitting on the edge of her bed. Unaware I was there, she continued to massage her legs, seeing their blue-green veins twisting beneath her skin. I wasn't as afraid seeing her body this second night. In the folds and creases, I saw her history. Her skin was the diary of her soul. All the springs she had watched the flowers bloom. The summer she had stood before the moon and kissed its face. The autumns she had grown wiser. The winters that had frozen the initials of her name. Each wrinkle was a record of this and of every hour, minute, and second she had lived. All her secrets were written in her skin. The things she had asked God for, the things she had cursed the devil about. In such age before me, I saw only beauty. Your legs hurt bad, huh? I said against the silence of the room. I could make you some tea out of alder bark. She turned to see me, but didn't scare at my presence. Don't fuss with any tea for me, she said. I'm fine. She didn't have her teeth in, so her words were followed by a slight whistle. I'm fine, she said again as she stood. She stepped in front of the full-length mirror. She stared at her body, turning side to see her waist and its edges. Growing old as a woman is like an attack. Never grow old, little Cherokee. Not that you can help it, unless you die young. I wish I had died when my hips were still erotic things. She twisted her hips as best she could. I am decades dirty and decades old, her voice cracked. I used to be a journey a man wanted to take. Now I'm just old woman slipperwort. That is my name now, old woman. There is nobody alive who remembers how beautiful I used to be. No one alive but me. Cherish your beauty, little Cherokee. It'll be gone before you know it. I'm not beautiful. She stared at me as if in shock. How can you say that, silly girl? I look like my father. Our fathers all give us something, but so too do our mothers. You have your father's skin, but you have your mother's shape. You have your father's jaw, but you have your mother's lips. These are the things we are given. How can you not know you are beautiful? Come here. She grabbed me by my hand and pulled me toward the mirror. Say you're beautiful, Betty, she said as she turned me to face my reflection. But I'm not. Who has told you this? My mother. Of course she has, my dear, Slipperwort chuckled. You are a reminder of everything she's losing. All mothers are envious of their daughters to a certain degree because the daughters are at the beginning of youth while the mothers are losing theirs. It's only natural to feel jealous. That's all your mother is doing, rearing her jealous head because you grow more beautiful. She fears losing her own loveliness. If you know your own magnificence, there goes her power. Her telling you you are no beauty is her being a woman before being a mother. She stepped away from the mirror and sat on the edge of the bed as if she just walked from one end of town to the other and was so very tired because of it. Reach me that lipstick, would you? She gestured to the basket of makeup on the dresser top. I still put on lipstick for every kiss, she said, but the kisses no longer come. I gave her the red lipstick and watched her apply the color to her thin lips as I sat beside her. Do you like sex, Miss Slipperwort? I asked while I had the nerve. She thought about it before saying, I was a very sexy person with very sexy people. It's true what they say about you then? What do they say, child? That you used to be the woman all the men visited if they had enough money to do so. Are you calling me a whore, child? She smiled. It was all gums. No, ma'am, but other folks do. They say the only thing stopped you from spreading your legs was getting old. She laughed. What else do they say? Pretty much just that, over and over again. Do they ever say anything about Lavanna? About what? Not a what, dear. A who? She took my chin gently in her hand and began to apply the lipstick on my lips. All the folks who knew about her are long dead now, except for me, she sighed. She was a girl born in Savannah, Georgia. Her mother wanted her to be named after the place she come into this world in, but she was a baby born late in the day, so they took the L off that lateness and put it in place of the S in Savannah. When I last saw her, we were merely a couple of 17-year-old girls who bit our nails with a smile. How old are you, little Cherokee? 11. You have some growing yet to do. She put my hair gently behind my ears. Where is Lavanna now? I asked. Is she an old woman too? Slipperwort looked off, her eyes glazing over. You know that patch of quicksand on Quicksand Lane, she asked? That's where Lavanna is. One day she stepped in that sand, her own self sinking in the mess of it all. If there is a bottom to be had, she's there. I remember after she sank, all kinds of ants come running out from the sand like it was their home, and she'd disturbed it. Ants? I asked, looking at the little ones crawling across her wall. I reckon that's why I like having them around, she said. They're the last of her. Why would she kill herself? Oh, it wasn't her fault, Slipperwort said. She was never quite right in the head after she came back home from that asylum her parents sent her to in order to be cured of her mental illness. That's what they called me and her wanting to be together, a mental illness. Something that was perverse and needed to be corrected. But really, all it was love. I don't suppose you would understand only being 11 years old. She studied me as if deciding whether to continue. It all started after my daddy caught me and Lavanna up in the attic on Granny's old bed, she said. Neither me nor Lavanna heard him coming up the steps. We were both naked and kissing on one another like we were the only two left on earth. Slipperwort looked at me with her brows arched in waiting. Ain't you going to say something? She asked. Ain't you going to tell me I'm disturbed for laying naked with a girl? No, Miss Slipperwort, I shook my head. I ain't going to say that. Is that why they sent her to the asylum? Because of what your daddy saw? She nodded as she said, Daddy wanted to send me to the asylum too, but Mama convinced him it would be best to beat the demon out of me at home. While I contended with my daddy's belt, Lavanna's folks sent her off with the men in the white coats. When they let her return home, her head was shaved and she had crescent-shaped scars all over her body. She was so thin. It was as if she didn't eat one damn meal while she was away. I tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't say a word back. The only thing she seemed to want to do was to walk around real slow. I still remember the string of drool at the corner of her mouth. I swear, she could look right at you, but not see you. They'd taken a girl away and returned a ghost. Folks say she committed suicide by walking out to that patch of quicksand, but she was already dead. Can't kill someone already dead. Slipperwort started to use the lipstick to draw bright red crescent shapes on her flesh. That's why I became a whore, she said as she drew more crescents. I was so afraid of being sent away, I laid with every man I could. They don't try to cure a woman who beds men. They pay her. Funny thing is, my parents didn't mind me being with 100 men. There was less shame in that than being with one girl. She dropped the lipstick to the floor. It was all used up anyway. I look back on it, she continued, and I realized that whole time I was so scared of ending up like Lavanna that I ended up sending my own self away. I locked myself up in the asylum inside me out of fear of knowing who I really am. She stood and stared into the mirror, stepping closer and closer to the glass until her hand and the reflection of it were touching fingertips. It ain't easy being a woman, little Cherokee, she said. It especially ain't easy being a woman who spends her life afraid of who she really is. They all call me Old Woman Slipperwort, Old Woman. That is who I am. The woman who walks in flat rubber-soled shoes to the store to buy potatoes and milk and bread. Stains on my dress from the breakfast I eat alone. My back hunched, my stockings falling down on legs that are veined blue and purple. A head of white hair and a face no one sees. I have lived 97 years on this earth. All I have to show for it is me, alone in a bedroom, staring at the reflection of a woman who was too afraid to be herself. She looked from her reflection to mine. Don't let it happen to you, Betty. Don't ever be afraid to be yourself. You don't want to live so long only to realize you ain't lived at all. That's from Betty, a novel by Tiffany McDaniel. Fresh out, brand new book at the Island Free Library, out by Knopf, 2020. Beautiful book. Back in circulation next week. I will return it on Tuesday when we open. I have finished it. So that was, fits a couple of salutes today, right? Couple of victories. That's for National Coming Out Day, which is today, October 11th. That's for Indigenous People Day, which I suppose is tomorrow, and for World Mental Health Day. We'll continue with those themes. Far be it for us to celebrate them all mushed together in one day, but I did feel that was appropriate for today. All right, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of Frankenstein Tea. Peace.